Hello, this is the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Thank you so much for tuning into this video in which we will look at order of operations using directed numbers. So there's going to be some negative numbers in our calculations. So we need to make sure we know this rule in blue that says positive and a negative in any order equals a negative, and two negatives together make a positive. What makes this rule complicated is that it's saying slightly different things depending on whether you're adding and subtracting versus if you're multiplying or dividing. So when we're adding or subtracting, these symbols need to be next to each other. So if we have -7 subtract -12, two negative symbols next to each other like that make a positive. So this is the same as -7 plus 12, which is just +5. Now, when we're multiplying or dividing, these rules talk about the answer. So they say if you have two negative numbers multiplied together, it gives a positive answer. Similarly, if you multiply together a positive and a negative in any order, the answer is negative. So when we have -7 times -12, we are multiplying together two negative numbers, so our answer is positive. It's going to be 84. Just make sure you know what these rules really mean, because a lot of people make mistakes. So for example, if we have something like -6 subtract 5, a lot of people say, okay, two negatives, so the answer must be positive. But that's not true at all, because when we're subtracting or adding, these two symbols need to be next to each other. In fact, -6 subtract 5 is -11. So two negatives give a positive answer only when you're multiplying or dividing. So let's look at taking this further using order of operations. Sometimes you'll get questions like this in which there are multiple operations. So here, this is actually a negative and a negative. We have two operations, subtract and multiply. So when you have multiple operations, we need to have an order of operations so that everyone gets the same answer. We don't want you to get a different answer if you did subtract first than if you multiply first. So to be clear, we all follow this acronym here, BIDMAS. So you do anything in the brackets first, then you do the indices next. So indices means raising to a power. You deal with any powers next. Now division and multiplication are actually the same rank. So what that means is that you do whichever comes first, left to right. It doesn't mean you always do division first. Now similarly, for addition and subtraction, they are the same rank. You do whichever occurs first from left to right. So when we have a question like this, we have a subtract and a times, the BIDMAS acronym says we do the multiplication first. So what we're going to do is this part first. So you need to show your working out and show your steps. So I'm going to leave the -30 alone. Now 7 times -4 is -28, because a positive times a negative gives a negative answer. So what we have here is -30 subtract -28. Now can I please ask you, make sure when you use equal signs the things are actually equal. You wouldn't believe how many people would just write equals -28 and have an untrue statement. Okay, so we've got -30 subtract -28. We know when we're adding or subtracting, if you have two negatives next to each other, they make a plus. So this becomes -30 plus 28, which is of course equal to -2. All right, let's try this harder one here that has a few operations. So we have a power or index, an addition, a multiplication, and another power. So we need BIDMAS to tell me in which order we do the operations. So we do anything in brackets first. So we're going to deal with all of this first and then square our answer. So inside the brackets, index comes first, then multiplication, then addition. So let's start with the -6 squared. Well, when you square a negative, the answer's positive, because a negative times itself, a negative times a negative is positive. So -6 squared is actually positive 36. Now I'm going to do the multiplication. 11 times -4 is -44. So this is equal to 36 subtract 44 squared. Well, of course, 36 minus 44 is negative 8. So now I've got negative 8 squared. And once again, remember when you square a negative, the answer is positive. You can't square a number and get a negative answer. So negative 8 squared is positive 64. So just note here, this addition changed to a subtraction here because 11 times 4 we did first, and that gave us a negative number. 36 minus 44 is exactly the same as if I wrote 36 plus negative 44. They're exactly the same. All right, let's now look at where we have to insert brackets into statements. So each of these is a statement, and it turns out as it sits, they are untrue statements. If we look at this one, this says negative 12 plus 4 times negative 2 equals 16. Well, that's not true because BIDMAS dictates that we do the times first. We get negative 12, subtract 8, which is actually negative 20. So what we can do though is insert brackets and make this statement true. See, brackets only have one role in mathematics, and that's to change the order of operations. Sometimes we want to do an addition before a multiplication. Sometimes we want to do a division before a subtraction. That's what brackets are for. Now there are actually only two operations in this statement because this is a negative 12 and this is a negative 2. So plus and times. Ordinarily we do the times first. So if I want to change the order of operations, I need to do the plus first and I need to put the brackets here and here. See, now this is a true statement. If I do the addition first, I get negative 12 plus 4, which is negative 8, times negative 2, which is positive 16. That's a true statement. This one's a little harder because there are multiple places we could put the brackets so that we change the answer. So here we have negative 15, subtract 3 times negative 6, divided by negative 3. So really here, there are 3 operations between the numbers. There's minus, a subtract, a times, and then a divide. So ordinarily what we would do is times first, then division. Because these are the same rank, we do whichever occurs first from left to right. So as this statement sits, we'd get negative 15, subtract negative 18, divided by minus 3. And you can just take my word, it doesn't equal minus 1. This is not a true statement. So we need to put the brackets somewhere so that we change the order of operations and make this a true statement. So from trial and error, if we put the brackets here and here, we will get a true statement. See, if you were to go and figure this out, we would now have to do the times first, but then the subtraction second. All of that before the division. So if we went and did this, we would get negative 15, subtract. Now 3 times negative 6 is negative 18. But of course, we know that when we have two negative symbols next to each other, we can change them into a plus. So we get negative 15 plus 18 is positive 3, and 3 divided by negative 3 equals negative 1. We now have a true statement. Without the brackets, it was false. With the brackets, it's true. All right, thank you so much for tuning into this video. This has been the luckiest maths teacher in the world. Have a great day.